unsigned hype. Frontline aeronauts flurry. Zero dark 30. Zero friends, minotaur fugly. Stepchild, evoke lunch, jumped over plunging net lines. Up beside tongue-tied, hungry enzymes. Devolved in a Mothman, munching textiles. Punisher, out past go time, back 10 fried worms chubbier. Brown grass both sides. Canned food, man-made tools. Lanacan band-aids, mandrake root. Bindle on a broomstick, pancake shoes. And a handshake proof campaign. Can't lose, can't gain. Smoke out moles like a force of nature. Pray fortune return to his favor. Swiftly, maybe in the form of a nest egg. Maybe in the form of a Tesla death ray. Or a solid gold scene with something better to celebrate than powder on a face like a flat foot on jelly day. My moral compass, all that shit spinning in the shadows of a moral magnet. Are we supporting the artist or enabling the addict? I mean, I guess it matters to me. I wish it mattered to you. How 1,000 virtues kick the same bucket like Chinatown turtles. Roving packs of elusive young become choke lord riders over boosted drums in the terrifying face of a future tongue. Down from a huntable surplus to one. 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 Check his own breakneck pulse over colors in a drain.
Hey guys. Hey guys, how's it going? This is Coen. I'm here with Matt for our first ever episode of Sports Ball here on the WTF podcast network. Today we're going to talk about the Kawhi Leonard free agency update, Kawhi Leonard trade with the Raptors. I was ready for us to honestly talk about absolutely nothing. This really just fell into our laps, eh? There has been a lot going on. I mean, first Tavares to the Tavares to the Leafs. I've got the Raptors on my mind. First Tavares to the Leafs, which in and of itself, while people saw it coming, it was still huge news. I mean, I as an NBA fan, I'm excited. As a Raptors fan, I'm excited. I'm just excited all over. And I know, definitely. And I think that I think you're right. There's a lot to be said about the fact that Kawhi Leonard, when healthy, is one of the top 5 players in the league. Yeah. Here, give me a second.
So yeah, he's barely audible in the actual stream.
Okay. So it seems like you're a little quiet on the... Here we go. Technical difficulties. We've got our producer here.
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, it's... There we go. Okay, cool.
Well,
Perfect.
I can't hear him that well. Oh, right. I forgot about that. Yeah, now I can hear him.
Okay, so now his
Awesome.
levels should be better.
Sweet.
Let him talk on his own for a second.
Matt?
Peter Pickle, pick whatever the heck that thing is. I don't know. All right.
That's our wonderful technical producer, Brandon.
Yep.
You have a screen for this.
I forgot the screen. He spent so long working on it.
I know, so long.
So like we were saying, who do you think won this trade then? Oh, we lost you.
Yeah, it's because I muted myself, maybe.
Okay.
How's that? Okay. Can you hear me now?
We can.
All right. Yeah, so this is interesting, and it's hard to unpack. you can say on paper, the Raptors definitely won this deal. I feel like if Kawhi had term and there wasn't uncertainty about his future, and if it was like the ability to sign and trade, all of those things, I think the Raptors have to give up a lot more than what they did in terms of prospects, in terms of picks, and future considerations, things like that. Now, because of the uncertainty, which throws a wrench in this, he has no term, he has a player option, but that's it. You're basically getting Kawhi Leonard for a year. You just traded your franchise player, your franchise leader in every scoring stat category, and that's all you're getting. You know what I mean? You're getting a year for DeMar DeRozan, who is controllable and wanted to stay and retire in here. So, as a fan of the team, I think there's a lot of hard feelings.
Yeah.
But from a pure basketball standpoint, you have to take this deal every time.
Yeah,
every time.
And I'm warming up to that idea. I mean,
right.
I know we were talking about it earlier, but once I cooled down and I got over the fact that DeMar DeRozan, the only Raptors star I've ever known, in my Chris Bosh was there, but it wasn't the same. There wasn't the joy surrounding Toronto basketball that we have now.
No.
So I was.
Well, there was a lot of bitter feelings at that time, right? Like the Vince Carter scenario, where the team really threw Vince under the bus and made us hate him, to the Chris Bosh era, which was not near as promising, what was supposed to be the Bargnani era, not the DeRozan era.
Great pasta.
Right.
I mean, now you get to be part of a larger Raptors fan base, whereas before it was like being a martyr to the Leafs.
Yes.
So I'm glad I don't have to be a martyr anymore. And DeRozan really was he brought around that era for us. I mean, that was
absolutely.
It's hard. He's day one. But when it comes down to it, Kawhi Leonard really just is the better basketball option. And I like
that's just it, and it's just because of his defense, right? Because again, the offensive numbers are comparable between the two. They are. It's just defense. It's unfortunate that the guy can just play defense, and it's just not in his DNA, and that's okay.
Yeah, and well, hopefully, and I mean, there were reports coming out of Raptors camp that said that Nick Nurse was actually going to try to get DeRozan to play defense. I guess instead it was just easier to get a guy who already plays defense at an all-NBA, all-defense level.
You want a spicy take?
Oh,
I think
a spicy take.
Nick Nurse wanted DeRozan gone. That's why this trade happens.
Yeah.
That's why this trade happens. And it might have been like, at first he was like, well, I got to make him play defense. But it's funny how muddled yet transparent this whole since the Raptors were eliminated, this whole process has been. You know, Masai comes out and says, "Well, we're gonna have a team meeting. We're gonna do all the end of the season interviews with everybody, and then I'm gonna make a decision on the head coach." Right? Because you don't let a head coach get this far into his term without extending him, typically, or if you're not gonna just do it, right? Like,
well, there's talk among analysts and journalists, so I don't know if this has merit to it, but they seem to believe that Masai really wanted his own head coach in there, and had for a while.
Which again, it could be Masai's ego, which is fine. Like, he has the right to as the president of the team. But you do this, you make this move now. That's what I don't understand. It's not the fact that they made the move. It's just the timing doesn't really gel.
Now,
you know what I mean?
Do you think Dwayne Casey still gets fired if they know that Kawhi is coming?
I don't see how you can justify it, right? Like, player personnel issues aside, I mean, what coach in the NBA? Like, I dislike the argument that Dwayne Casey didn't make good game times decisions with his players when he was told by his higher ups, "I want you to play an unprecedented amount of players in the playoffs, and I want you to put bench mob into motion." That was the failure we saw with the idea of bench mob. I think there was too many options. They didn't really skirt it down to, we're going to ride you guys into the ground.
And if this was a one-off thing, then yeah, I would agree with you. If this was the 1 year where Casey's in coaching ineptitude, I guess, was the problem, then I mean, I'd be on your side. But we know that for the past 3 or 4 years, this has been something that's been talked about how we've had superior talented rosters in the first and second round. Well, at least in the first round, and we just can't.
According to Raptors fans,
no,
yes.
Well, let's be serious. Let's be serious. That Brooklyn team that we lost to was over the hill. There was no way that they should have taken us to 7 games. There's no way they should have won it. That
old man power.
It was Joe Johnson. It was Joe Johnson getting complete mismatches on the outside and us doing absolutely nothing to scheme to stop it. Casey, while I respect the trust he has in his players, there's only so much trust you can put in the players if you're not putting them in the right places to succeed. And I don't think he always knew how to put the players in those places.
I think with his lineup, he had to overcoach. And I think he fell victim to his own overcoaching. I feel like, in essence, to say that Brooklyn, and they had no business losing to Brooklyn, I didn't feel that way in that series when it happened. I wasn't surprised by the result when it happened either. Just based on the fact that you say that, and then you watch the Dallas Mavericks win a championship with a team that should have all been retired. You know what I mean? Like, that's that one weird thing is, like, you have to be careful. The only time the super teams have to be wary is when an old man team shows up. I mean, the Spurs have been winning like that since the 2000s. You know what I mean? They've been winning with teams that everybody else would say, these guys are close to retiring. This is done. But because they play a good system. And I think Brooklyn played a good system, and they got in the heads of the Raptors. And the Raptors, notoriously, as a player core, mentally weak. And I think Dwayne Casey falls short in terms of trying to coach that. And I think a lot of NBA coaches have that problem because, unfortunately, the NBA, you're really relying on a DeMar DeRozan, or you're relying on a LeBron James, or you're relying on these guys to be on top of their game when it matters. And I think that the Raptors failed at that intrinsically, and unfortunately, 5 years pretty much putting out the same pieces, and then with a couple shuffled in and out, right? Like just a couple additions. You really were trying to tell, I think, as an organization, as Masai was trying to tell Casey, no, this is a team. I want you to take the same thing, and I want you to make it be better. And I think he did as much as he could. But if you give Dwayne Casey a player like Kawhi Leonard, I think it's a different story. Yeah. I don't think we're talking about this right now. You know what I mean? Because
now Nick Nurse gets to put his confidence into Kawhi Leonard.
Well, yeah, and it makes sense on so many levels. I would think you would agree with this with Masai. If Masai's going to make the ballsy move to get rid of the coach of the year, a well-loved coach, the most winningest coach, he gave this franchise no reason really to fire. Any other sports franchise would be very happy with the coaching that they've gotten to this point with Casey. I understand you need a culture reset after the 5th time. I get that. That's the reason why I see what happened. This move makes a whole lot more sense, the fact that DeMar DeRozan is gone. But he had to do something, because if Nurse walked into this season with the same lineup and there was abject failure in terms of not reaching the conference finals at the very least, Nick Nurse is cooked.
He gets roasted, definitely.
Absolutely, right? Because everybody's just going to point to Casey. Because the danger is, and I know a lot of people don't see this, Detroit's shaping up to be something interesting. They might be this year's Miami Heat.
In what sense?
Like, in just a hard-working team with enough talent to get into the playoffs. If that were to happen,
Raptors or the Spurs?
No. Sorry, the Detroit Pistons.
Oh, the
right?
Pistons with Casey. Oh, of course.
With Casey, right?
And that's, well, I mean, they are in the East.
They're in the East, and there's a bunch of guys that if they put their hard hats on. If you're in the East right now, a playoff position that is 6, 7, 8 is open.
Well,
it's open season.
And when you really think about it, it goes both ways. I mean, for different reasons. I mean, the East is, if you're in the East or the West, you have a legitimate shot. I mean, there's maybe 2 teams in each conference that are completely out of playoff contention. But other than that, I mean, in the East, you have obviously the playoff teams from last year. You've got Boston, and now arguably, I would still say Toronto in the 1 and 2. Kawhi Leonard immediately becomes the best player in the conference.
Well, I mean, I was saying that with conviction until you really think.
Okay, well,
I mean,
maybe not the
it's,
best, but top 3.
I feel bad. I gotta say, I feel bad for Kyrie. Kyrie proves that he's.
Come on. Kyrie's not a top 10 NBA player. Top 15, but not top 10. I think he's injured too much. And
his defense is lacking.
Subpar at best. I mean, and he's not the size that some of these guys are that allows him to do a little more to make up for those deficiencies. But I still think Boston, Toronto at the top. You've got Philly. You've got. I mean, Washington looks primed to at least have. It can't get any worse than last year. I mean, they're still talented. Maybe Dwight Howard will take them to a point where their chemistry is so bad that it becomes laughable, and that brings them closer together. Like, the only other way their chemistry could be this bad is if they were on a daytime TV show. And all of it is just so humorous that they can pull themselves together long enough to pull out a 4 seed. And then there's a litany of teams, even Brooklyn in that, who finished, in the 13th or 14th spot last year with no talent above them. And, I mean, they do have a couple of nice pieces in there.
Chicago can be a playoff bubble team.
Of course. And then you look at the West, and even the middling teams, Memphis looks like they could actually be a really good team with Garrett Temple, I think, was a really good addition. Now, while he's not moving the needle a ton, a healthy Marc Gasol and Mike Conley are going to be a huge benefit. Maybe Chandler Parsons comes back rejuvenated after an offseason removed from his injuries. I mean, hopefully.
But realistically, I think there's maybe 2 spots in the West now that are open. And I see Denver making more of a push for it.
I mean, outside of Golden State and Houston, who's a lock to get into the Western playoffs?
I think San Antonio's still a lock. OKC's still is going to be hard to not make the playoffs.
Okay, Lakers.
So Lakers, maybe we'll see what happens.
It's always a question with LeBron James.
That's the thing. Every year I do, and he proves me wrong. And one of these times, the law of averages suggests that I will be right one year that it's too much for him. But I mean,
the devil's got his due.
In all honesty, he's got a better team in LA right now than he did in Cleveland last year. But he's playing in the West, and again, I can't emphasize the talent level in the West is so much better.
This is how I know you're not a true Raptors fan, because you're willing to bet against LeBron. If LeBron were to walk into a room I was in, I would give him my lunch money.
I wouldn't. I'd argue with him, right? I'd be like, "Nah, you still ain't Jordan, bro. This is GOAT money, homie." Utah, you got Utah.
Of course.
Definitely going to be a playoff team.
Do you think they finish where they were at last season, above where they were at, or below where they were at?
Utah?
Yeah, I mean, because that was.
I think they. If the needle moves, it's going to really.
Last year, right?
Yeah, and if the needle moves, it's going to be based on the fact that Mitchell does take that next step. You can get a really healthy Ricky Rubio, Rudy Gobert, really kind of solidifies his defensive. Dominance continues. I would say the most they can really move is a spot. If Mitchell transcends, like kind of how Kawhi Leonard did, you could see a huge improvement in terms of they could be fighting 3. They could be fighting for that 3 spot. But there just isn't a lot of movement between Houston and Golden State. Yes, that's almost a lock, 1 or 2, either one.
And that's
right?
It, right? So, I mean, but it does look like a really wide open playoff race. Now,
I would say positionally, it's wide open in terms of the teams that are already there. But like you've got teams like the Clippers, they're not going to do anything.
Well,
Sacramento is not going to do anything.
The Clippers have gone out and signed a bunch of no big, super big free agents, but they've had a quietly good offseason, and they look like for whatever reason they're going to keep trying to play out the Doc Rivers tenure in a winning mentality instead of tanking. So I mean, they're going to be gunning for it. You've got Denver, but I mean. If we're looking at the Leonard DeRozan trade, do you see the needle moving for either team?
I think because San Antonio is going to see more of an immediate improvement from this trade, to be honest, because DeRozan played all year last year.
Yeah.
He has playoff experience, as however poor it is, he has it.
Any press
But when
is
you
good
consider that San Antonio without Kawhi was a 49 games won last year?
Yeah,
Right?
43,
I
47.
thought it was 47. Okay, 47 games won last year by the San Antonio Spurs without what you would consider even a DeRozan level talent, right? Let alone a Kawhi Leonard level talent.
And I think that was a big part of it, was the power play
yeah.
saying, we don't need you. You want to go to LA? We'll send you where we need to because we want to get something at least.
Well, and again, it's smart on their part. It's like, why would you handcuff your chances to make the playoffs again by sending Kawhi Leonard in your conference? Like, that was never going to happen.
No.
You know what I mean? I honestly don't think there was a package unless LA was literally willing to sell the future for Kawhi Leonard, which would make no sense in their position either. But San Antonio smartly positions itself to maybe move Kawhi out east, and who knows? Kawhi might love it.
Now,
He might love being out. I don't think he will, but he might love it out east, right? He might marry a Toronto girl and stay.
There's some tings, some dimes out there in Toronto. You
Oh,
don't know.
dude, he just meets one Toronto Portuguese girl. He ain't going
that's
nowhere.
It. That's
or
it. He's locked for
or
life.
Italian girl. He's locked for life. He's in like Toronto's Little Italy, like growing his own tomatoes in the backyard. It's over.
Now, this is something that I thought about earlier. Do you think that the Lakers should have made a harder push for Kawhi, knowing that really Kawhi's only goal is to play in LA? He never said he wants to play for the Lakers. And Kawhi's already beaten LeBron once. He knows he can do it. Jerry West is right now he's in the Bob Myers role that they have in Golden State, where he's the advisor to the president of basketball operations in the Clippers. Do you see any sort of free agency scramble coming next season?
Well, yes and no, right? What a lot of people are starting to fail to realize is that there's it's getting murkier, all right? Like, teams are realizing, and we've got enough teams on the bottom that have realized you cannot just be wishy-washy with your picks anymore, okay? Giving up the future right now in the NBA.
As far as, do you see like the Lakers and the Clippers maybe vying for Kawhi's attention, or do you see the Lakers being a clear number one with the Clippers a distant number two?
I have to say that there's got to be another team other than the Clippers. Or Kawhi Leonard doesn't really belong in the NBA. He's one of those guys that has all the talent in the world, but like,
oh come on, are they that bad? Are the Clippers that bad?
Okay, prove to me that they're better. Like,
well, so here's my pitch then. If I'm the Clippers, here's my sales pitch. So, Kawhi, you just spent a year playing in Toronto. You've seen what it's like in Toronto weather-wise. We know you want to be here. We've got you. So, yes, we don't have all the talent that the Lakers have, but what we do have is Jerry West. One of the best Lakers of all time. He literally is the symbol of the NBA. Now, we're going to get him to work with you to build a championship team in the next 2 to 3 years. We hear some pieces we have that we've acquired. They're mid-level guys. None of them are, world beaters, but none of them are D-leaguers either. Pick the ones you want to keep. They're all on short contracts. I don't think any of their players right now are under contract for longer than 2 or 3 seasons.
Where did DeAndre Jordan go again?
DeAndre went to Dallas.
Okay, so my point is this makes more sense to me if DeAndre is still in.
It does, definitely.
In LA. They couldn't even keep DeAndre, who everybody kind of feels that outside of the limelight of LA being his team isn't as highly touted as he should be.
Of course, but here's your kicker, right? So I know you want to go to LA. We're the only other team other than LeBron's here. Do you want to beat him or do you want to join him? Because we can beat him.
I see, and I think, unfortunately, like, there's two things going to be working for Kawhi here. One, he can take whatever he wants to play. Maybe even does like a short term, like doesn't even do a max dollar deal just to get a championship in LA, and then he chooses, right? Two, when you think of the fact that this guy won't even talk on his own. Yeah. I just have a feeling that as much as you want to talk about a guy who doesn't deal with media well, moving into the biggest media market in North America, and now having to deal with not just LeBron James, but the Ball family. You know what I mean?
That's tough.
The Kyle Kuzma stuff. If he goes to the Clippers, the pressure all of a sudden is you better be beating the Lakers now, right?
Yeah.
Well,
This is the NBA.
Clippers have never. But
That's
the
your
Clippers
job.
have never. The Clippers have never ever shown follow through in terms of a championship team. They just haven't. They've always fallen short, no matter the promises.
Is Chris Paul at Kawhi Leonard's level? You know, like
Offensively, Chris Paul is one of the best point guards in the league.
and I know,
he's
he's a
proving it.
bulldog defensively, but is Chris Paul at Kawhi Leonard's level?
In my opinion, no.
Okay, so if you have a player of Kawhi Leonard's stature, just right in Toronto right now, we immediately believe that for this season coming, we're championship contenders. Whether or not that's true, having
We're
a player
Eastern
of
Conference contenders.
Of course. But
Yeah.
whether or not that's true, having a player of Kawhi Leonard's caliber gives you that, I mean, not to a LeBron instant playoff level, but if you've got a decent supporting cast around you, I don't see why you can't take Kawhi Leonard at least to the playoffs and a little bit further in your first season, and then build a team around him. I mean, they're still based in LA, right? And they have,
Yeah, absolutely.
And when Lob City was running, they still had a really great fan base.
Well, yeah, the return to the playoffs for the Clippers was so long awaited. And when it finally happened with Lob City, it was an intense time. I mean, I've grown up with the Lakers being always good
Yeah.
and the Clippers being the joke. I mean, and unfortunately, I just think that it's ingrained in sports. Like, name another sport where both states' teams are doing well. You know what I mean? It just very rarely ever happens. You either the Jets are good or the Giants are good. Either the Mets are good or the Yankees are good. Either and New York's the prime example of that, right?
Tough.
Right, and outside of that, it's easier to have two teams that aren't very good in one state, other than two teams that are very good. I just think that one team will cause like a black hole effect on itself, and the Lakers are poised to do that again. Where I think that people are going to kind of forget about the Clippers, and maybe I'm forgetting about the Clippers, but I think
people
that
already
happens.
have forgotten about the Clippers.
And I think that the players are just as susceptible to that as well. There's something about playing for the purple and gold if you're going to play in LA. It's like kissing your sister to play for the Clippers in comparison.
Yeah.
It's almost better that he goes to like an OKC or finds himself or just stays in Toronto for an extra year to see what opens up.
Oh man,
Because
imagine that, Russell, Kawhi, and Paul George. I mean, it would never happen.
No.
You'd be paying $165 million a year in luxury tax, but...
Yes, absolutely. But I'm just saying in terms of, I think that would be a bigger draw. You know what I mean? In terms of, if you can't go to the Lakers, I think he's a Lakers dude.
I'm already planning his next move. I still can't believe that... I mean, do you see any way of him staying in Toronto long term? I mean, I know that reports coming out of Raptors camp said that they were talking with him all day Wednesday, and that they were very progressive and forward-looking meetings. But do you see that translating?
Honestly, I don't think the Raptors are going to try all that hard.
Yeah.
I don't. I honestly don't think the Raptors have any intention in now. You don't have to rebuild if you sign Kawhi to a max deal, right? You don't. But he is coming off of an injury that supposedly kept him out for a year. At 27 years old, he's starting to get to the wrong side of where you want a guy in that career coming out of an injury that's supposedly that bad.
Supposedly.
He's going to require a lot of money to stay, which is fine, but the problem with the Raptors right now is I think they want a reset in terms of it's time for a rebuild. How do we go about this without looking like Sacramento, without looking like other teams in the league that just bottom right out and say, we're looking for the picks, right? And I think that this is an intelligent way to do it. Look,
so I know we were talking about the timeline earlier. What would the timeline? It would be what, a 2-3 year rebuild, I guess. It'd be the start of about a 3 or 4 year rebuild.
Well, typically, fans and people need any good rebuild takes at least 5 years. All right, you sometimes get lucky by getting the beautiful present of getting a first round draft pick and an out of the park guy that's a guarantee, right? But it just doesn't happen often. Even when you get the first overall pick, there isn't always the guarantee number one guy,
Now,
right? And you see that.
Sorry, do you see any way that Kawhi stays this year, and that it could speed up the rebuild?
The only way that I just don't know, because like you could say, well, what if Toronto gives them the offer, like, this is your team, you are the face of this organization, you're going to take us to the promised land. My problem with that is how was he not that guy in San Antonio?
Well, I think LeBron Aldridge took a little bit of that from him when he thought it was going to be.
Yeah, but not enough. It wasn't like you were talking about that team superstar was him and LaMarcus Aldridge, right? Like it was Kawhi Leonard.
Kawhi's
it was
team,
Kawhi Leonard, sure. Yeah. So again, I just don't see how that's going to be any different. I don't see what the draw would be to be stay in Toronto, other than the fact that, like I said, he just has to fall in love with the city, and we'll see what happens.
Is playing in the East a draw enough?
I don't think so.
And the Supermax, so you've got the Supermax on the line for an extra year.
Well, yeah, again,
the
Supermax in San Antonio.
Right?
And you're playing. It might be. It honestly might be.
And you have a president of basketball operations who apparently is willing to do whatever it takes to make the team better, even if it's selling out. I mean, obviously, probably not him if you're giving him the Supermax, but you'd be looking at, oh, you want Lowry out of here? We'll do what we got to do to get Lowry out of here. Oh, you want Ibaka out of here? I mean, they're leaving, of course, but say somebody else down the line threatens Kawhi's opportunity in his eyes to get himself a ring, or in Masai's eyes. They're gone.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that goes without saying.
I mean, maybe I'm homing it, now that I was angry earlier, still upset that DeMar was leaving. Now I flipped completely over to the other side. And now I'm just trying to figure out ways for us to finagle, rope Kawhi into staying for another couple of years.
Yeah, and I think emotionally Raptors fans that's the struggle that they're having internally right now. And I think that it's less maniacal and a little more cynical than we all see. I think we all see this as it's a win-win for the Raptors, right? You either sign him after this year, right, where he's going to be basically playing for his reputation, which is good. You either sign him and you go, look at what we did, and everybody goes, well done, little town of Toronto. You know what I mean? Because that's how they treat us, right? Or what ends up happening is he walks, and you say, well, we kind of knew and we were prepared for it, but we did our best. We did our good old Canadian try, and we gave it a shot, and he just didn't want to be here. He's actually kind of the bad guy. Yeah. And then the Toronto media spins it as, oh, Toronto's not big enough for big old Kawhi Leonard. Yeah, I can see it happening, right? Yeah. And then what they do is they kind of stumble into, oh, I guess we're rebuilding. You know what I mean?
I know.
And then the fans are going to say, well, obviously, I guess, friggin' Kawhi Leonard just left us with nothing. We went and saved him from San Antonio, gave up our franchise player, and this is the thanks we get!
and I know we were talking about this earlier, where I remember, because you brought up that point. You make a good point, because if it was a restricted free agency, and Kawhi was, we had the chance to match, and we said, oh, we did everything we could, and we couldn't get him. He didn't want to be here. And Kawhi says, well, no, they offered me a contract and you guys declined to match it. Or almost any other scenario when it comes to free agency would have that out, where if Toronto said we did everything we could to retain him and he didn't want to be here and tried to vilify him like that, Kawhi would be able to come back and just say, well, no, the other team offered me something better. But in this case, because it's just a player option, all Kawhi has to do is say, yes, I want to take it, or no, I, Kawhi Leonard, do not want to take the amount of money that has been predetermined for you to give me. And that's a tough one.
The other thing is he's going to take less money to go to LA, right?
Well,
so to play for the Lakers, he has to take less money. So then we get to Toronto can offer him $21, let's say, $1 million, or max. What's max money right now?
Oh, max now is looking at about $34 million.
All right, we can offer him $30 million or $28 million, right? So, well, that puts us against the cap. We can't do anything, right?
Yeah.
And then then he turns around and he takes $24 million to play with LA because of their cap issue, right? But that's what he'll take whatever gets him in.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, this is,
either way, as long as Toronto offers more than that, then it looks like they did their best, right? And I think that this is all it is an optics play. That the only way you can get rid of a guy like DeMar DeRozan is to trade him for something of the ilk of, and with the perceived notion that you're trying.
and
You know what I mean?
And that is
You can't just
really-
give up on it.
And that is really what I saw when I initially saw the trade too, was, you know, swing for the fences this year, spark a rebuild. Kawhi's going to be gone. You've got Danny Green, who's another $10 million gone. You gave yourself a $2.5 or a $3 million trade exception that you can use at any time this year for Jakob Poeltl, who, while I'm sad to see him go, better him than OG or DeLon or Van Vliet.
And you
or
have to give up something. You know, like,
Yeah,
that's
of
what
course.
fans don't get. You have to give up something. There's no NHL trades on the video game that are happening where you just take off the decline of trade and you're just like, that makes sense to me. It just doesn't work, right? Like, this is a business. You can't just let teams get fleeced. I mean, as an avid Leaf fan since the early 1990s, I know what it's like when you have a general manager that lets your team get fleeced for all its prospects. It's not a good time. It's not a good time.
Man, Toronto is not good at this.
No, they are like, quite possibly. And thanks for the Eagles finally winning. We're probably the worst North American sports team in the big markets because we're the baby
We're
big.
the last bastard.
We're the baby big, right? So we're really like, we're 20 years now without a championship.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jays were, and I mean, to be fair, in the major sports.
We are 20 years without a championship. The Raptors, you, the Leafs, are many more than that.
No, I would say that Toronto as a city is 20 years
That's
without
fair.
a major.
That's
And
fair.
that's I'm just kind of pointing to the Jays were the last like big deal
That was-
championship team.
That was just my chance to get a Leafs dig in, since you take your
I don't know.
Raptors digs anyway.
I'm so immune to it. It just kind of hits me and I don't even realize it. You know, it's like it's just like, oh yeah, it's a 67 joke. I get it.
So I was thinking the other thing that could happen if we're looking rebuild. So DeRozan shopped around in trade talks gets you small amounts of assets.
Mm-hmm.
But what we've done is acquired the largest asset available on the market right now in Kawhi Leonard.
Yes.
To a team who's most desirable, to a team that already has a stable of young assets in the Lakers. Now, do you see a flip, coming this season? Do you see maybe Toronto pulling a white people renovating houses and re-upping Kawhi Leonard's stock and flipping him over to the Lakers?
I've got to say that is more likely than them trying to actually sell Toronto.
Because I have
all
something
right?
for this.
I honestly believe that with Kawhi's age, with his injury concerns, and the fact that he still needs to show up this year. Not just show. I know he's showing up to camp, but he needs to play well.
Yeah.
He needs to play well. Like, he needs to be a 20-point per game guy, which, you know, he's just under. He needs to be a 10 assist guy, which
Yeah,
he's
he
just
needs to
under.
get more than 8 assists in a game, which he's never done in his career, which is
Yeah,
a baffling number to me.
Absolutely. So,
Excuse me.
so which I agree with you on. The only real issue here is, so those things have to come into line for him to have any value. If they do, then if he's mediocre, then you try to sell the city. If he's really good, this is going to take some intestinal fortitude, but you ship him off and you ask for Kuzma and you say, I'm giving you
Now,
bird rights to a top 5 player.
Now, have you thought of a package that would work? I have something for this, but I want to know if you've thought. What off the top of your head, what would you think of a package?
Well, I would send Kawhi Leonard. I would send Norm Powell. And I would send. I would try to avoid picks, but I would send next year's second because we already got rid of this year's first.
Well, I don't know if we
worry
can.
about this
I don't
draft.
know if we can get rid of next year's second because this heavily protected first rounder that we gave up, if it doesn't convey, it turns into 2 seconds down the line. So
Yeah,
I
but
think
down
we've
the
already-
line, it doesn't-
Yeah, but that means that would be the 2020 and 2021 seconds.
Right. Well, so you give up the 2019 second.
Oh, so would you be okay with us having no picks this year if,
Yeah.
say, we fall below 20th?
if you're getting the package
fall
that you
above
should be
20,
getting,
I guess.
it depends on the package you get from the
Okay.
Lakers. If the Lakers are going to give up a Kuzma and some prospects,
Okay.
you make that deal. If
Well-
it's not a Kuzma, because Kuzma automatically sets your
Would you see
those
Kuzma
picks.
as the best thing that you could get from the Lakers? Because I go for Ingram.
Ingram is nice, but I think Ingram's game is still antiquated,
Well,
right?
also,
I think
You gotta
Kuzma
remember
is
that Toronto's way into the cap, right? So we got to make sure that we're taking back. I think it's 20% of what we're giving out. So I think Kuzma, Josh Hart. Who else? No, Ingram's at the end of his rookie scale contract, but Kuzma and Josh Hart are making like $3 million each.
Yeah.
Ingram at least is making, I think, closer to $8 million. And then I looked at Luol Deng and Josh Hart. Say we eat Luol Deng's contract. He's making $18 million a year, something like that.
Okay.
For the next 2 years. And then
which works with the archetype.
Right, and then Ingram and Josh Hart. And then you say we give you Kawhi and I don't know what else. Maybe a heavily protected first-round pick in 2020.
Can we, though? Can the Raptors give another first-round pick? Another protected first-round pick?
It's tough. I'm not sure. I guess not unless ours doesn't convey. In which
Because,
case-
like, how old is it?
Yeah, the Stepien rule is weird.
How old is Ingram?
Ingram's 23.
Okay, well that's
Right.
not bad.
Right.
I just know that Kuzma is
He's
coming off a
prototypical.
rookie year. He's coming off a rookie year. He has the skill sets. I believe he has the skill set to be everything the Raptors could use
He's a
in terms of
prototypical
today's
NBA point or stretch four in today's NBA, really.
right. And I think Ingram is a great player. Do you see him as another DeRozan? Or do you see him as, like, you know what I mean? Like, is he going to be a,
he played
quintessential top 20 player, or is he going to be, like, top 10?
Top 10 is a lot to ask of a kid who's 23
Absolutely.
right now.
But that's what the Raptors need.
Yeah, if you're trading away Kawhi Leonard and you're just looking to get a package back of assets, I mean, Ingram, Josh Hart, we take Luol Deng's contract, maybe we give up a heavily protected 2021 first rounder, or we give up some sort of picks. But we take 2021's too late. You're right. So maybe we say we give you Kawhi and Norm Powell. You give us Ingram, and we'll take Luol Deng's contract, and then we also want a pick of some sort. I mean, a first round pick, even if it's just for more assets to have and hold. Maybe a 2020 or a 2021 first round pick. I start loading up for 2021. Yeah.
Right. I start loading up as many picks as I can, even if it is like a bunch of like protected picks in the first 20. It has to be 20 or more pick. Is if you get 2 or 3 of those, you can flip them into picking in the top 6. You know what I mean? You can find a way. I think that and I think the NBA needs to start reaching that culture, being smarter with how it deals with its assets that way.
I mean, we saw how dumb the NBA executives were when the cap boosted, and they promptly spent all of their money on players like Bismack Biyombo at $18 million a year. I hate to rip on Biz, but like that's a terrible contract.
Well, and again, it's the same way I feel with DeRozan. I don't think DeRozan's a bad player, as I don't think Biz is a bad player. I just don't think they're the players that are max money guys. Yeah. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, those are the type of players that are taking up a lot of salary percentage on teams that could be using it in a whole lot more efficient way.
I think Ingram's about 2 years away from being a top 20 NBA player.
He's 2 years away from being 2 years away?
No. if Bruno Caboclo had ever seen meaningful NBA minutes, then I would have been okay with that. But Brandon Ingram is 2 years away from having like an actual NBA star career, I think. Okay. In the right situation. Yeah. You know, like I believe you. When Lonzo went down, they had him playing point guard actually for about 15 minutes a game, where he's got about just as good of like a court vision as you'd like from a young wing player. I mean, he's 22, 23. He's got a feel for the game. I think really that's why they slotted him in there at point when Lonzo went down was, here, you obviously have the flow of a game down. Why don't you see if you can manage it a little bit? And, I think that was a good development for him. I'd be okay getting Ingram back.
Okay, no, I would be very happy to get Ingram. But, like, in all honesty, I try to get Kuzma. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't like Kuzma. I just don't think Kuzma's your center. I think he's an add-on. I don't see Kuzma as your centerpiece,
Well, I don't think anything you get in terms of, like, from a Kawhi deal is going to be a centerpiece. I think everybody's way too smart for that. You're trading with LA because LA is the team he wants to go to. The leverage that you have with LA is you get to say, I'm giving you the bird rights to this guy. You can sign him for 5 years and not have to worry about it again instead of only being able to sign him for 4, right?
Yeah.
So if you get any deal done, you get that extra year of control if you're the Lakers, which I think Magic would appreciate. Now, that matters in terms of if Magic is trying to rebuild the dynasty, which he has to do, because regardless of how you feel about LeBron, he's only signed for 2 years with a third player option.
No, it's
as soon
3
as
with a 4-player option.
Oh, sorry. So 3 with a 4-player option, but still, you need to surround him with a team now, sooner than later, so that they can at least gel.
It's a longer one than LeBron's used to, but definitely it's a shorter one than most NBA players are used to get ready for that.
You're right, and again, considering where the Lakers are right now as a franchise, there's a lot of work to be done. I don't think LeBron has the patience to want to wait for Ingram and a lot of 2-year-away players right now aren't going to be ready by the time LeBron might be considering what his next move is. I'd rather get LeBron when he's focused on winning in LA now than when he's starting to wonder, well, is my boy coming up? Am I going to get to ball with my boy? Where am I going? Am I heading back to Cleveland? You know what I mean? Things like that.
And I think you're right. I think it's just a matter of time until Kawhi's in Los Angeles. I mean, there was talk of the the whole Paul George, well, I'm just going to stay here, scenario happening next year with Kawhi. I don't see it.
Because it's a completely different scenario. Paul George went to OKC because he wanted to go to OKC. He wanted to play with Westbrook. Yeah. He's buddies with Westbrook.
He went to OKC because Indiana traded him to OKC. He wanted to go to LA, and he made it very clearly known that he wanted to go to LA.
Yeah, but he got there with Westbrook.
The difference, that's the thing. Toronto doesn't have a generational talent like Westbrook. And OKC, for all its faults, has put its faith in Westbrook and managed itself to the best of its ability. It's not mismanaged the way Toronto is, where they fired the coach of the year. Billy Donovan they installed and really let him grow a culture there. And while they did trade people, the James Harden trade could go down as one of the worst in NBA history. But the reason they did it was because they put their faith in Westbrook to lead that team to the promised land. And I think that's something about staying in a city. I mean, also they did an entire day after him.
Hindsight's 2020. You know what I mean? Like with these guys, I mean, we might look in 2 years and be like, what was AC thinking with getting rid of Oladipo? Because he's taken Indiana to this level that is just and basically you got a younger, better version of Paul George running around in Indiana right now, being a better player. If
you get Oladipo and Thaddeus Young, do you take that trade?
For Kawhi?
Yeah. Oladipo, because Oladipo's Depot's a big pick and roll guy.
But for me, it's age and control.
Well,
right?
Thaddeus Young would be your win now guy on an expiring contract, or not expiring, but reasonable contract. I think he's got 2 or 3 years left, but he's a veteran, hard nosed guy. I would trust him to play well into his 30s. But then Oladipo's your centerpiece. Are you?
Yeah, but how old is Depot
25?
Again? Right, so you're getting a centerpiece, which is nice, but 2
years away, he's going to be 27, close to his prime when
he's going to be coming up on a contract again where he
That's
might.
A tough one.
Yeah, like what you need is to get a kid who sees Toronto as his opportunity and wants to be a part of that, right? Because this is a rebuild coming. This isn't this isn't winning anymore.
It's definitely a sign.
Because right now Toronto needs to think in 5 years the window in the NBA opens up again. and they want to be prepared for that, right?
Yeah.
And if they're not prepared for that, and they keep trying to win now when winning, it, in my opinion, doesn't matter. As I brought up to you earlier, nobody wants to be the Buffalo Bills of their sport.
Yeah.
All right. Nobody
Stuck on
talks
the
about the
treadmill of mediocrity or
nobody
above
talks.
mediocrity.
Yeah, no one talks positively of the Buffalo Bills of the early '90s, and it was an incredible team. It was an incredible team, but
A team that never was.
all they did was lose Super Bowls.
That's
That's
tough.
all they did, right? And I don't think you want to make a team that always makes it to the NBA. Their goal is to make it to the NBA Finals, and that's it, right? And we've seen disasters, like I pointed out. You've got the Atlanta Braves in baseball, who always were there, could never finish it. You have the Buffalo Bills and San Jose in hockey.
San Jose was a bad one, yeah.
And San Jose's gotten lucky because they draft well, but there's going to be a point where things are going to be bad for a while in San Jose
And,
because they just
definitely.
it's just a reality, unfortunately.
Of course. I mean, we've talked so much about Kawhi Leonard. I mean, I'm happy. I'm happy that he's here. I've warmed up to it. I think they still have to make a couple more moves for this year. If what they're trying to do is really contend this year and then, spark a rebuild. But otherwise, hopefully they just figure it out in the next couple of years. Now, on the flip side, how do you...
Well, 1 second.
What do you...
just to finish the Kawhi stuff off. Think about it this way. The options the Raptors had 3 days ago when it came to the core that they had to the options they have now with Kawhi.
Huge.
It's a lot more.
Definitely.
And I think that's the win. You almost got to forget about the players. It's the fact that you have more maneuverability.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And in trading pieces and getting something back for pieces.
And I think the fact that we're even talking about them right now shows really the biggest part of the trade. The fact that the only thing we're not saying, that we're not only saying, well, we're gonna have to run it back next year and then we'll just lose in the playoffs.
Well, earlier because the LA Dodgers just traded for Manny Machado, right?
Oh, that's where he ended up, eh?
Yeah, so Manny Machado is officially a Dodger now.
That's huge.
He's going to be playing. He's playing shortstop because Seager, I think it's Seager, who's their starting shortstop in LA, who's been injured since May, and it doesn't look like he's coming back this season. They had the president on the radio today in Toronto radio on Sportsnet, saying basically, and the one guy asked him, Richard Deitch asked him. Being that the Lakers brought in a player like LeBron, do you feel a pressure to bring in something that big as you're in competing markets in the same city? And he kind of said, well, yeah, you have to.
Of course.
It's in a fun way, but you don't want another sports franchise.
Is huge.
You don't want to lose. And I kind of feel like Toronto kind of did the same thing with the Leafs. And I mean, it's not even just competing organizations. It's organizations under the same umbrella. The Leafs go out and make a move like getting John Tavares, and the Raptors go and put out the same team. I think that right now, I want to go to a Raptors game now.
Definitely.
I want to see Kawhi. I was wake me up when the playoffs start again this year if they would have rolled out what they had.
I'm going to be excited. I'm excited for the season. And yeah, definitely. Yesterday or the day before, that was not the case. And I think, they've been I watch a lot of Fox Sports 1. I know Nick Wright and Chris Carter and Chris Mannix were talking, and they were saying, championship is the ceiling. Now, it's a far-off ceiling. But that's the kind of, that's the NBA landscape that we're in now. As soon as Kawhi Leonard moves to a team, I mean, they were a 59-win team last season. Who knows? It's a very small chance, but who knows? And then on the flip side, do you see the Spurs? Do you see it tilting the needle for the Spurs? Do you think that DeRozan increases their win total at all?
Absolutely. You win without a premier wing guy, and you put up 47 wins, and then you add nothing but buckets, DeMar DeRozan.
Yes.
You gotta get at least a couple more games, and then you're looking as a 50-win team. 50-win team gets you in the playoffs. I mean, you can go make noise.
People don't realize that Aldridge and DeRozan were both All-NBAers last year. That's
right.
2 All-NBA guys. I mean, it's interesting because they've primarily been a ball movement and, kick out to three-point shooters through a motion, ball movement offense. DeRozan and Aldridge, two things they are not known for is 3-point shooting and moving the ball.
No.
But I guess it kind of shows. I guess this will kind of be Pop, and it's interesting for Pop Swansong to see how he deals with this change in NBA in personnel. I guess from his 2-star players to move from guys like Tim Duncan and Tony Parker, who are so good at that, to now have 2 ball-stopping mid-range shooters as his core.
You never doubt Pops, man. Like, I mean, he went from David Robinson and Tim Duncan couldn't coexist on the like in the block, and they did, and they won championships. And to Tony Parker's style of basketball is not going to mix well with a slow aging Tim Duncan. They did, you know what I mean? To the transition to guys with like Manu Ginobili coming in. The difference with that is the Spurs are a program. They're not just a NBA destination. It's a pro. If you're checking your ego at the door to play for San Antonio, and you're playing for the Spurs on the jersey, and It's so rare in the NBA. It's very old school, but it gets results, and nobody's doing that right now.
I think that's what I think Kawhi couldn't get that around his head, that he's not playing for himself. If you play for the Spurs, you play for the Spurs. You don't play for your own fame. I think that was a huge point of contention. But I was looking.
We'll never know.
Of course, and hopefully, knowing the Spurs organization, they'll never let it come out.
No.
But I was looking at their core, and I mean, it looks good. So now they've got DeMar, they've got Dejounte Murray, Rudy Gay, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Pau Gasol as their starting lineup. So that's a long, athletic. Well, Gasol and Aldridge really are just going to be standing there in the paint. They're not athletic at this point in their career. But, I mean, if you've got DeMar, who says that he's ready to play defense, and in Pop's lineup should, Dejounte Murray, who's looking like a young All-NBA or All-Defense candidate, and Rudy Gay, who, I mean, is Rudy Gay, but if the rest of the team is defending, he generally tends to defend a little bit. It could look good. And then you've got, coming off the bench, Patty Mills, Marco Bellinelli, and now Jakob Poeltl, who I think is a really interesting piece for them.
A prototypical Popovich player.
Definitely. Now, do you think he's going to turn out to be more Duncan or more Splitter? Do you think he's going to be more a Tim Duncan, or do you see more of Tiago Splitter in him? Do you think he's going to become a core piece? Maybe not Tim Duncan. That's hard to ask.
I was gonna say you're talking about a former top 5 player.
Let's say he become because Tim Duncan there's no in between with Pop. Tiago Splitter was like a 12 to 15 minute role player, and then Tim Duncan's a top 5 power forward of all time. There's no in between with him.
In Pops, you gotta trust. You never know what he's gonna get out of these guys. Tony Parker shouldn't have been the guy he was. Manu Ginobili shouldn't have been the guy he was. Tim Duncan, I mean, when the Spurs drafted Duncan, the fan base of San Antonio lost their minds. How dare you do that to David Robinson? Who's this kid? He looks slow. Because Robinson was the Admiral. This guy was ripped, man. He was Robinson was an intimidating force. And put in baskets, but was one of those quiet worker guys, very nice. He wasn't seen as a mean guy, but the look of the dude was intimidating.
Yeah, he was a huge guy.
Right, and you bring in Tim Duncan, who's tall, but he always had a soft look to him. Definitely. And he always kind of slouched and moved around the court. He just didn't look like he intimidated. So everybody thought that they had just got this baby to force out Robinson. And in actuality, it was the best thing that they could have done. And they turned Duncan into, undoubtedly, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He was one of the top players in the league when he was in it.
Yeah, he's in the discussion for best power forward of all time.
Right, and I mean, at the end of the day, you can't make that comparison. What is Poeltl going to be? When you're in Pops' hands, you could become the biggest star in the world.
Brad Stevens before Brad Stevens was Brad Stevens.
Right.
People are never the same when they leave San Antonio.
Right. Norm Powell got paid because of the fact that
Jonathan Simmons did.
Well, wasn't Powell? Who was the Raptor that was?
That was Corey Joseph. Corey Joseph.
Yeah, Corey Joseph. And Corey Joseph got paid because
Hometown
of San
kid.
Antonio, right?
And what's interesting is Aldridge is really the best stretch four that DeRozan's ever played with. And Pau Gasol in the last 2 or 3 years of his career has managed to, add a three-pointer, a legitimate three-pointer to his game. The spacing in Pop's system is going to be pretty interesting to see.
It's going to be hard to score against San Antonio. Even if you're not playing D, you don't really have to. Those guys just need to do this, right?
They're
Like, they just
huge
stretch their arms
dudes,
out, yeah. And long guys, you know what I mean? It's not just like tall. These
I'm
guys are
wondering if
very...
DeRozan's going to take back a little bit of his slashing game now that they have Aldridge as a legitimate pick and pop threat to pull guys out of the middle. DeRozan could have a rejuvenated career. I mean, Chip England's there. I mean, well known as the best shooting coach in the NBA right now.
Right.
I'm excited to see what DeMar could do. I mean, we were talking about it earlier. You were calling it, what was the term? What was the analogy you used for my love of DeMar DeRozan?
Oh, you're like that girlfriend who was with the loser boyfriend who every year is like, he's going to get better this year. Oh, crisis now, and it just never happens, and it's just like, and that's what it felt like with the Raptors, unfortunately. And it's, again, unfortunately, the disparage falls on DeMar DeRozan, and it was the organization that did this.
Now, again,
they let this get stagnant.
I'm going to tell you the same thing I told you earlier. I would let DeMar steal from my wallet for another year, because I think that this is the year that his three-point shot comes to fruition, and when it happens, even though he's not on my team anymore, I'm still going to be the first one to say I told you so.
Well, Dwayne Casey told me so, right?
Yeah.
Like, so the day the trade happened, Dwayne Casey comes on the radio.
I'll call Dwayne in Detroit, and I'll say, see, Dwayne, we told him so. We told him, Dwayne.
I'll be like, I'm sorry, coach. I'm sorry, right? Well, like, and I mean, like, that's what I mean. You always think that LeBron's coming back with something less because he's just getting to that age and the years and the mileage and all the long playoff runs. It's like, when is this guy going to crack? He's not human, right? So you keep betting against him. You keep betting against the fact that DeRozan will find another level for his game. And every year, undoubtedly, he does.
And I think that's a perfect pop player, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it needed to happen because it's better than wasting DeRozan's years, and I think later on we'll see it this way, and I think DeRozan will see it this way. It's better than wasting his best years playing for a team that's looking to rebuild.
No,
and I think that's what this signaled. It's time to rebuild. Let's get it. It's not like they traded him to Sacramento.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
and
not
on the
like
San Antonio side, because they were headed for a rebuild too. I mean, with Aldridge on his last legs. I mean, they really just ran out the same team this year because there's nothing really with the age of their core that they could do. But I don't, as much as I love DeMar, I don't see him as a one-player rebuild delay.
No.
Like, I don't see him as being able to say, especially when you're trading out a potentially healthy Kawhi for DeMar DeRozan, it doesn't seem like you can say with that core, well, we're just not going to rebuild. We're just going to run it back out again, which is essentially
I think both teams were kind of in the same situation, right? They both had an aging core. They both kind of best days are behind them. With San Antonio, it was, we can't even get Kawhi to show up. Yeah, we might as well trade him as an asset and get a player that we know will show up day in, day out, in DeMar DeRozan. And again, they are closer with DeRozan signed for 2 years than the Raptors are when it comes to getting Kawhi to sign long term and then getting assets for Kawhi. All San Antonio needs to do is go out again. Remember that there is an awesome free agent class coming. Yeah. That this isn't over, and LA can't buy all the players. Philly's going to be in the same position where it's against the cap. Houston doesn't have a lot of room against the cap. Like, there's only so many destinations for these guys.
It's going to be interesting.
You get Anthony Davis in San Antonio. Look out.
Does Anthony Davis? Well, this is what I was going to say. It's going to be interesting to see how San Antonio does if Pop does as it seems. If he's going to leave at the end of this season, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I don't think they give up. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, Scotty Bowman left the Detroit Red Wings, and it was just they ended.
Are you watching the chat right now?
No, I'm not.
I saw a real life Raptor once. Somebody turned the fence off in the rain, and all the DeRozans got out. Don't worry. Did you Jedi mind trick them into not eating you? But I wish we could talk Kawhi Leonard and DeRozan all night. But there is some other stuff going on in NBA free agency. Marcus Smart just recently got signed with the Celtics. What do you think of the reuniting of Smart and his team?
I mean, it's interesting, right? I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Celtics, the rumors are already starting to fly that Butler and Kyrie are talking about a reuniting in like a buddies uniting in Chicago to make that team relevant again, which was odd because Butler left. I thought Chicago on pretty bad terms, but I mean, when you're a talented player,
they would have to get rid of their head coach.
Right, but that being said, I think that Boston is setting itself up to be able to deal with that. And again, I just the term and the money is a little surprising to me because again, there's free agents coming. There are supposedly in every Danny Ainge wants to be involved in every trade talk that happens. Yet you're pushing yourself. They're going to have money issues in 2 years.
You know what? $12 million. Well, yeah. What? $13 million a year. I can live with paying a guy as indispensable to my defense as Smart $13 million a year. You know, I don't think, especially when you've got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in LA, who does. I think any NBA fan can say that Marcus Smart does much more for the Celtics than KCP does for the Lakers, and he's making 12. You know,
I know it's just the number. Like I said, the number. I'd understand the number if it was like a year deal.
Yeah.
Like a bit of a bridge contract. Like, here, we'll give you the money. We do like you, but we need to see how things shape up a little bit. But you're committing quite a bit of time to this guy, and you're committing money that, like, again, what are you going to do when Tatum needs to be re-upped? What are you going to do
I don't
when...
think $13 million is going to affect your bottom line that much. Right?
Sure, you just it's a bench player. It's a bench player. It's not it's not just a 13. Like I said, his
contract is up in 4 years or 3 years now.
3 years,
Jaylen Brown needs a re-up in 2 years.
Yeah.
But you've got Al Horford, who's going to be off contract in 2 years, and I would be surprised if he got another max or if he got close to the max at the age that he's going to be at. I think that you can get him back for 13 or 15 mil. Marcus Morris is going to be into his 30s at that point. Or so let's say 20 to 25 mil for Al Horford, who again is another guy that I'm okay paying that kind of money to. I think you can make it work.
You can, but that's what I mean. Why make it work?
But do you think?
Why not sign him to better term? Like, sign him to 2 years, see what happens, and then if he does, you know what I mean. I just, like I said, I think my problem isn't the number; it's just the term. And they're going to run in, and I think this is where the NBA spends irresponsibly. It doesn't seem like teams think really of what are we going to do in 5 years. It's all about winning right now, and it's like, but this is why you have such fall off the cliff situations with good teams, and then all of a sudden all their players are gone because they all aged out, and they're awful. They're awful again. You know what I mean? It's just wow.
I think it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, as much as I love Brad Stevens, there's not a lot of minutes to go around for a lot of guys in that backcourt now, and in that rotation in general. I mean, Kyrie, Terry, you've got Kyrie, Terry, Shane Larkin, Marcus Smart. I guess Marcus Smart they play as a wing, so really he's competing more with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. You've got Marcus Morris. Who else do you have out there? But it's going to be tough. Do you see any? You know what? I see there could be some problems maybe with. I know Smart was unhappy at the start of free agency when it opened about them not contacting him really.
Yeah, that's just him being a little whiny girl. Like, it's just baby talk, man. Like, the NBA is so full of these mediocre players that are just like.
Smart would be the heart and soul of that team for a while, but I think
how many heart and souls can one team have? Like, Smart's the heart and soul. Tatum's the heart and soul. Thomas is the heart and soul. Kyrie's they have one heart and soul. His name is Kyrie. And then
Kyrie
after
is
Kyrie,
not their heart and soul. It's been Marcus Smart for like 5-6 years now.
It should be your best player. I think Tatum took over. Tatum took over as the heart and soul last year. He was impressive.
I
That
don't
kid
think
was
Tatum's
impressive.
a loud guy, though. You know, I think Marcus Smart plays the Draymond.
Al
of that.
Horford isn't loud, but I think he's
I
a
think
big
Marcus
part
Smart
of that
plays
core.
the Draymond of that team, though. You know, the guy who's going to get them pumped up and ready for games and fired up. But so there
That's
wasn't
worth
any.
$13 million.
Well, and
for 4
knows?
years.
Who knows if this
As you
was
say.
something that they kind of locked themselves into, because it only came out that they signed him after Toronto got Kawhi. So there's
Yeah.
a chance that they were signing him to a little bit of a larger contract than they needed to, so that they could package him with Marcus Morris and try to ship them off in a deal for Kawhi.
Maybe.
but-
Again, it's neither here nor there. He's not going to play enough to matter.
I keep 20 minutes a game, maybe. Yeah.
You
I
think
expect-
that much?
Oh
'Cause
yeah.
I see him being.
He's been getting
Well-
25 to 30 plus minutes a game. I mean, he's an indispensable part of the rotation. I mean, he's a terrible shooter, but he's a great defender.
Healthy Hayward, healthy Kyrie. You're saying
Yeah,
20
there's
minutes a game.
lot.
Okay.
20 minutes a
Okay.
game, I could see it. Brad Stevens is a wizard with minutes. I see Shane Larkin as being the one out of that rotation. I see
Okay.
Smart maybe pushing down to point guard a little bit more, to spell Terry and Kyrie for 5 minutes a game, and then you fit him in closer to the end of the rotation. But who knows? And then in finally Melo news. Melo goes to Melo goes to the Hawks. Schroeder goes to the Thunder. And then,
Melo gets bought out.
Yeah, so Melo's not getting stretched. He's actually just getting bought out.
Yes.
And then, well, because Atlanta looks like this year they're throwing away. They're putting Trae Young in, getting him comfortable with the offense and an NBA lifestyle, and then making a push next year for free agency, it would appear. And then Mike Muscala is going to the Sixers, who I think quietly could be the dark horse of this trade. I think Mike Muscala could carve out a really nice role as like a stretch 5 spelling Joel Embiid. And especially with Ben Simmons, then you can play them in these rotations where you've got Muscala out at the perimeter pulling the help out, and then Ben Simmons just barreling down the lane.
Well, that's really all that they were missing in terms of they needed a guy that could shoot the three.
Well, they needed
Right.
a guy to back up Embiid in that sense.
Yeah, because you
Amir
don't.
Johnson isn't cutting it.
And ideally, I don't want Embiid being my sole 3-point shooter, right?
No.
Like his size, I want him around. I want him everywhere, right? I don't want him in one spot, right? And with how Simmons looks like it's going to take some time to develop a shot because there is none.
Yeah, absolutely, man. A scary lack.
Yeah, you need. I actually thought that it would have been a nice move if they would have went and grabbed somebody like a Kyle Korver.
Oh, well, I
You know
think
what I
Kyle
mean?
Korver
Like,
right now they would only be able to get in trade, and he's making about $7 million a year. Oh no, did they buy him out?
I don't remember what happened to Korver. I thought he was on like the block. I don't know if they bought him out, but last I heard he was on the block.
Okay.
They're seeing who was interested in him, and I thought that he would have been a good fit for a team like the 76ers, who could use a solid corner 3 guy who that's what he does. Stands in the corner.
Did JJ
shoots
re-up?
the three.
Is JJ back with the Sixers, Redick? I haven't heard anything about him. I know he signed the 1-year, $23 million deal or some nonsense like that. I'm not sure if they're re-signing him. I think they have to. I mean, he was by far their best shooter in the playoffs, but I don't know what happened there.
Who knows, right? Because again, the fact that they didn't pull the trigger based on the fact that they kept Marcel Fultz,
That's true.
Suggests to me that he's going to be healthy. It's going to be a Simmons situation, and he might be the guy who they say you're our point guard, right?
Those minutes have to come from somewhere. Maybe they're coming out of Redick.
You don't keep that kid to bury him again, right?
No,
like
that's
you can't.
true. You can't redshirt him 2 years in a row.
No, and especially when he was the linchpin to a Kawhi deal. You
Yeah.
can't tell your fan base that, we kept this kid to sit him and we didn't go get Kawhi, right? Like that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that would be inexcusable. Now, as far as Schroeder goes in OKC, what do you think of his fit? Do you think it moves the needle for OKC at all?
No,
No?
nothing moves the needle for OKC. That's the problem with OKC.
Well, it doesn't
Because-
add wins at all. Like, do you think...
No.
No?
Their deficiencies are still going to be their same deficiencies, which is, unfortunately, you live and die by them like Westbrook, right? Like, you live. It's that sword analogy, right? It's his ability and inability at times
Yeah.
to score all the points,
And
right?
I thought the same thing, honestly. It's odd
Yeah.
that they paired Schroeder with him, considering. I mean, Oladipo is really very much the same type of player. You know, ball dominant, pick and roll heavy, needs the ball in his hands for him to be able to score. Oladipo was, in fact, a much better three-point shooter than Schroeder is. Schroeder's at about, I think his career is, wait, I have it here, career 32%.
Which is under average.
And last season, he shot 29% from deep. Not only that, but he's got attitude issues like crazy. That's why Atlanta wanted to get rid of him in the first place. And he's not nearly the defender that Oladipo was.
And he's got the worst hair in the NBA.
Yeah, what? I like it. It's the old school Brandon Jennings. You remember when Brandon Jennings came into the league? He had the high top?
Oh, you cut out again. Yeah, no, I don't like that little skunk streak that
You
he
don't
has
like the
done.
high top? Oh, right. He's got the skunk streak.
Yeah,
I do
don't.
But he's got the old school. You remember when Brandon Jennings came into the league? He had the high top.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't mind the high. I don't mind the high top. It's just I don't like the Fifth Element, right? Like, I love that movie, but that's not the future we're living in right now.
Trade gets a B minus for the hair.
Yeah, absolutely. OKC loses just on style.
No, I think talent-wise alone, it swings the needle. I mean, anything swings the needle from Melo. Right?
I think the problem.
alone.
I think the problem with OKC is that they have to do something. They can't stay the way they are because they are trying to sell a fan base on this year's. They basically turn into the Raptors. This is the year that Westbrook finally breaks through, right?
Yeah.
And you bring in this kid because he's a highly touted prospect. It's what he is still, right?
Yeah.
And you bring in Schroeder. He's got attitude. He's got swagger. Maybe he can hang with this crew. But at the end of the day, when you've got one guy taking 60+% of all your shots, it really comes down to Westbrook, and he kind of created this monster for himself.
Yeah.
Now, if anybody can overcome it, it is Westbrook. But more of what they need to do is figure out how to make him 6 inches taller.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I wanted to save the best part of this trade for last. Now, Schroeder leaving Atlanta opens up the starting point guard position for Steph Curry 2.0, Trae Young.
Right. Yep.
Who had a historically bad summer league.
Because that definitely defines what happens with players in their NBA career.
And it doesn't for guys like Melvin Bagley and DeAndre Ayton who aren't built for summer league. But Nate Robinson is like the all-time summer league leader, where all he did was just hold on to the ball and jack up shots. Summer league is made for Trae Youngs and the Steph Currys of the world. You're playing in subpar position against defenses that have have never played together. This is where guys
Vegas.
look, exactly, right? But look at what look at who the summer league MVP was. It was Josh Hart. Yeah. Josh Hart was out there dropping 30s on people. And Trae Young is shooting 1 for 15 on his first 15 shots of summer league.
Well, we had the same conversation last year about
Did you see his first 2 shots in summer league? Well, even Lonzo was the summer league MVP. Trae Young can't even hit. Trae Young airballed his first 2 shots of summer league.
I know. I can't put much stock in it. And the only reason why is because I remember when Kobe came into the league, his first shot was a complete he was notorious.
You're making my voice get all high, Matt.
His first year, he was notorious for just airmailing it, and people were booing him in LA. And
Kobe
and now
Curry 2.0. Woo!
Right? Yeah. No, I'm calling it right now. He's the next Kobe, and especially primed the primed Atlanta market and team looks like they're ready for Steph Curry 2.0.
I think Trae Young's in for a rude awakening when he gets to the NBA, man. I think that.
I think anybody who wants to play in Atlanta is in.
Well, dude, I think other players already hate Steph Curry. They're like, this guy, he white collar kid, looks like he's 12, shooting and shimmying on them all over the court from places they didn't think was possible. And Trae Young comes in, gets all this hype about being the next Steph Curry. He's shorter than Steph. He's got a shorter wingspan. He's not as defensively sound. He's not as quick. And his shot selection is questionable at best and laughable at worst.
Sure. And like I said, the problem is that that's what they always like to do. They like to label these kids with the number one superstar. I mean, you find every year, like, again, to reference back to the NHL, every defenseman that was a supposed puck mover and was Swedish was also Lindstrom. He skates and he's like a Lindstrom X, and it was just like, yeah, let's just put one of the best defenders of all time, and we're just gonna make that. Then even say, well, I mean, a poor man's Lindstrom, though. It's like, oh god, like the kid just probably has traits that were very look like Steph Curry, and if the gods of basketball want to open up and shine their rays upon him, that's what he would be at his ridiculous potential.
You know what?
Now his actual potential is human, and he doesn't hit shots from half court, and maybe he has better ankles. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe,
that's probably all that's going to happen.
Who knows? Maybe he'll literally be Steph Curry 2.0, and him breaking both his ankles in disgusting fashion will be the catalyst for another All NBA career.
But the problem is the biggest problem is that it's Atlanta, and as you just said before this, part of this trade signals that they're looking to stink.
Yeah, they're tanking this year.
And
I think John Collins and
every...
Trae Young are their only two noteworthy players. And then Dwayne Dedmon, who I think is an underrated center for the NBA.
And you look at every team that does this purposeful tank, their young stars never develop the way that they should. Well, they just don't.
On that topic, thank you for bringing up the topic of rebuilds and talent never...
Oh, you're cutting out. I don't know why you're cutting out.
Here, well, on the topic of rebuilds and players never panning out the way you want them to, the Kings look half decent.
They do. They do.
So they just signed, and I think this is a big one in the terms of what it shows for the direction the Kings organization is taking. Nemanja Bjelica is reportedly in talks with Sacramento for a 2-year, $13 million deal. Now, he was in Minnesota. He was actually going to sign with Philly and had a verbal commitment, backed out because he said he wanted to go back to the EuroLeague. Now, he was a EuroLeague god.
Yep. He was MVP.
Right, and actually decided instead that he wants to come and sign for the Kings, a team that nobody sees competing. When he had the chance to play for Philly, now it is for a little more money. He's looking at 2-year 13 as opposed to the 1 year for 4.4 that he was getting with Philly. But in Philly, you think it would have been the perfect spot for him. You spot up around Ben Simmons, you get wide open shots. All you have to do really is play defense, rebound the ball, and score.
I think the reason is but I think the reason why he was considering the EuroLeague is that this kid wants to be a star. He wants to be the focus of an offense. And he's not a focus. And again, this is a lot of problems with a lot of NBA players are having right now, and why you're seeing like this constant every year. It's like, we'll shake him up and see who lands where, right? Yeah. It's just there's so many guys that think that they're the guy because in college they were the guy, or in high school they're the guy, and the EuroLeague they were the guy, and now they're not the guy.
Yeah, we were talking about this. I think the one and done rule is one of the biggest proponents of that, and the removal of it will be great for not only college basketball because you don't get these ego-driven first years freshmen who step in and are automatically king on campus, and then you ship them off to the NBA where they believe that they're still king of the campus. And that can be interesting.
Yep. Yeah, well, and like I said, this and at the same time, Sacramento is a quiet, warm place to live out your basketball life.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like you're
more than that now.
Yeah. Well, they could be but the problem is they're still in the West. Like, how much movement do you really have right now?
They look like they could have a process 2.0 going on. So they've got De'Aaron Fox and Melvin Bagley Jr. You've now got Fox, Buddy Hield, who I think is a really quietly efficient scorer and good three-point shooter. Bogdan Bogdanovic, who's another young prospect. Bagley and Cauley-Stein. Willie Cauley-Stein, I think, he could be either another Clint Capela type rim runner, or he could be the next JaVale McGee, who just never quite puts it together and has all the talent in the world, but can't get past himself.
And some of the best-looking jerseys in the league.
Oh, those jerseys are gorgeous, eh? Those new ones.
Yeah,
I like them.
I've always liked the Kings when they switched to purple. I always like the purple, black, silver look. I always liked it.
Really nice. Then
Yeah, in the
you've
Doug
got,
Christie days.
right, then to round out your roster, you've got some interesting guys. I mean, Ben McLemore's a has-been.
Oh, you're cut out.
Am I here?
Yeah, you're here. You just keep cutting out. I think it's the volume. I think it's like you're popping and it just cuts you out instead of.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Give me a second.
Yeah.
This should help a little bit. I'll just turn myself down slightly. So, rounding out their roster, they've got guys like, Ben McLemore.
Oh, no, you cut out again.
Oh, really? That's odd.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah,
Okay,
you keep
so-
just going on these stretches.
Ben McLemore, Frank Mason. You've got Justin Jackson, who's another prospect. Maybe this is OBS telling us to hurry the fuck up.
Yeah.
And then, Zebo and Harry Giles and Scala Sierra are two interesting pieces.
Well, maybe this is finally a team that's building upon analytics and not so much on star power.
Well, I think
right? Like,
I think they've pretty much shut Vivek Ranadivac out of operations because he was running that team into the ground, and they said Vlade Divac is he's doing everything now.
Well, I mean, he's a legend in the NBA.
Yeah.
The end of the day, like I was telling you before, I think that there's going to be a culture change sooner than later in the NBA when it comes to how teams start looking at this. I think the NBA needs to stop with the eye test like every other sport has pretty much, and they need to start putting together because we've turned into the NBA has turned into the league it has. It's no longer like, well, he has to be this tall and this big and this long to do it. Yet we still talk in those senses.
Yeah, wingspan is still one of the most important aspects of an NBA player.
Right, when really what we're looking at is how many shots are you taking from three, how many guys do you have taking those shots from three, and then all the rest you should be taking. Like, what it really is eliminate the mid-range jump shot in no man's land, and it's either you're taking three-point shots or you're driving the rim. And if you can do one of those two things well, and then have some defensive practitioners in your front court, you are going to be a good team. And I don't understand why more teams aren't putting this together. And this is why Indiana quietly is becoming the team that they are. This is why Utah quietly, even though I get paid by them, is becoming the team that they are. But when you look at it, it's like they're proficient in areas with their players, but those players aren't necessarily. And it's not like, I mean, Gobert is a star, but they're not like super team setup. They are one superstar away from blowing open the entire NBA, right? And I think
that's hot,
Sacramento, it can be that, right? Like if you set up and if these teams stop trying to trade away pieces to start the rebuild over again. Like Atlanta's constantly resetting. Sacramento is constantly be resetting. Just stick with it.
I think De'Aaron Fox could quietly be one of the best draftings of last year. Not for his on-court effect, because I think he's going to be at best a top 10 point guard in the league. But I think that if you're sparking a rebuild in Sacramento, and for years your front man has been Boogie, to get a guy like Fox, who all he cares about is winning and working hard and doing the little things and playing his fucking brains out just hard as he can, I think that's a great player to start with if you're trying to really spark your franchise again.
Well, I think a lot of teams actually do have to look at the Raptors. You can do it without a superstar, and they did.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You can do it without a superstar.
High work ethic, blue collar players who are going to come in and set the tempo for your team, and they might not be superstars, but they're stars in their own right.
Absolutely, right. And these teams have an opening, and eventually, like I said, I think you're going to see the scouting's going to start changing. It's like, no, you know what? I don't need a 55% 3-point shooter. I need a 40% 3-point shooter, and I need 3 of them. Okay, got that, right? Like, which isn't ridiculous to think of, right? Like 4 guys that are hanging around 37 to 40% on the 3-point line, and then I need enough in my front court. I need garbage time guys that are going to just rim rock. Yeah. That's it.
And you look at it's a more than the sum of their parts team.
Yes, right. And I think that's when I think as soon as the analytics gets into basketball, the PA will do everything it can to keep it because it means they aren't going to be paid as much.
Yeah.
But because we see this in all of the leagues that went the analytic way, the MLB, the NHL, their players' paychecks suffer because of analytics overall.
Well, I think
right?
I think NBA coaches would love to have analytics as a be more of a focus. But one of the big issues with that is defensive analytics are not there yet the way they are in baseball, where everything is measurable.
Right.
In the NBA, the best one you have is defensive plus minus or defensive win shares, or defensive win shares and real defensive plus minus. Those are and neither of those, it doesn't account for how many shots have I altered by being in the lane, how many shots have I altered by whipping a guy out to the 3-point line and running him off of it so he runs downhill towards my big. Those.
But that's a crazy thing. That's the crazy thing about the analytics nerds. They'll figure it out. It's just the NBA has done its due diligence. It feels like to stay away from analytics changing its game. It really has.
Talk to Daryl Morey about that though.
And I think no, but I mean, like, really, when you look at why guys are like draft day. When you watch draft day in the NFL and the NBA, they still talk about like how old baseball managers talk about baseball players. Yeah. Oh, he's just got a real good look.
Yeah,
he's just got a real good look. He's just meaty thighs. He just jumps through the rope, and it's like, yeah. And that's why you got guys that are meandering through the league that were supposed to be these high end. Like if you look at the 2009 draft board and you look at where a lot of those high picks are, they're not even in this country right now. You know what I mean?
Well, Steph Curry is now the only player from the 2009 draft that is with his original team.
There's one other. There's one other on that list that's still playing. No. DeMar was traded, but when I was looking at the list, there is one guy, and I think he plays on the Bucks. It's weird because it says that, and then it shows the list, and I'll go through it real quick, and I'll tell you who it is. Maybe he got traded and ended up back on the team.
Maybe.
But I saw it and I was like, that's the same team. That is interesting. I was like, you had this list and wrote this whole article based on this, and yet, so I have the NBA open right now. Oh god, what I love is how much they talk about like the Melo deal being an actual big deal.
The end goal of it was all the same. It's just he gets bought out at the end of it.
You cut out again, brother. Sorry. I heard the end goal.
Yeah, the end goal is the same. Melo gets bought out.
Yeah.
Nothing changed. We knew it was going to happen. The only thing that changed is Schroeder now on the Thunder, which I don't think is a huge deal. But I mean, good for OKC.
It says here, number 10 pick in that draft was Brandon Jennings. Plays for the Bucks.
He still plays for the Bucks. Still? No.
Yeah. Well, that's what it says on the list. That's all I'm saying.
Still there?
It's on the list.
I thought because I know he was in Washington. Well, he was in Washington for a while, so he hasn't been with his team for all of it. Oh, yep, for the Milwaukee Bucks. Wow, good for him. Back with the Bucks.
So basically, this guy's article is completely wrong, and you just have to look in the top 10.
So Brandon Jennings was with the Wiz for a while.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, he was John Wall's backup for a bit.
And now he's back with the Bucks.
Exactly.
Okay, so hasn't left because I thought that was really weird. I was like, Bucks and Bucks. Well.
Oh, and then the last thing we haven't talked about, Clint Capela's still unsigned.
Oh, you cut out again, brother.
Oh, just
what did Brandon say it was?
Brandon says the audio in the stream's fine.
Okay, then maybe it's just through
it must just be
whatever.
Discord.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But sorry, what was Clint Capela's still unsigned? Nothing. Quiet on the Capela front.
Yeah, no, and it's not a surprise. We talked about it at length, and like, okay, if the Raptors want to keep Kawhi, if they truly want to keep Kawhi, there's a trade to be made there, and it makes sense for the team.
What was it? Either Norm Powell and either JV or Ibaka
in some sort of package.
Yeah, for Capela. And
on a sign and trade.
Honestly, I think, you just take Capela. You say, take Norman Powell off our hands. You guys are making a 3-year championship run. He's on a 3-year contract. 3-and-D guy. There you go. And then we'll throw in Ibaka. I think they'd probably want JV back. And if you're talking about analytics, then JV gives them something, the only real thing that they don't already have, which is a back-to-the-basket big. He's not quite as explosive as Capela is to the rim, but he's proven he can be a really good rim runner. And then he gives them that toughness down low that Capela doesn't. And on the flip
Right.
side, Capela, I mean, he does kind of clog up your lane a little bit. But if you can keep Ibaka, then that gives you a little bit more spacing, especially Danny Green on the outside. That helps.
Well, it makes Ibaka relevant.
Yeah.
But what it gives
It
Toronto
removes
is
another down low scorer. You're right. It frees up touches for Ibaka.
yeah, and but it also what it does is it adds movement to the Raptors, right?
Yeah.
Like Capella's going to move better than JV. That's the problem with watching JV try to play in a motion focused
Yeah.
ball movement offense is almost painful. I feel bad for the guy because he's not that bad, and
I
he gets
know.
such a bad rap. But he's playing on the worst possible kind of idea of offense that you could put a guy like him in. I think.
I just don't know if JV can keep up with Houston's pace. I think Houston might play too quickly for JV because I'm thinking about
It depends. Like honestly, and I told you this. I think last year, I would just love to see someone play JV the way he should be played. It's like you play within 5 feet of the basket. It's all I want you to do.
Yeah, and so you could play him for 25 minutes a game. He gives you 25 really good minutes a game where you say he comes off the bench, get any guy who can jump up and catch a ball to play your starting center. And then when it's time to have a little bit of a change of pace and spell Harden and Paul a little bit, you bring JV out to wreck second unit.
Yeah.
And yes, you're paying him $17 million a year, but you're getting something that you don't already have, and you can bring
But that's the going rate for that kind of player, right? Like Biz makes 17 mil. Like that's the going rate. That's market value right now. That's the NBA's old.
It's hard for me to talk about Houston's contract situation when they're paying Ryan Anderson $25 million a year. Like, I still can't believe that Ryan Anderson is being paid $25 million a year to sit on the bench.
Yeah. But I mean, again, that's the owners. Like everybody wants to point at these players. If this is the problem with the NBA is that the players and blah blah blah. It's like no, the owners were drunk when they popped up.
Power and money.
Yeah, and they just spent on guys. And again, I feel like they just the cap situation isn't the players' fault, but the way that the cap was spent was the owner's fault, and that's what's created this whole idea of like these players think that they're worth 17 mil.
I think
when it's like, no, bro.
I think that it's a huge fallacy and I think Michelle Roberts is right. And we talked about this on the last podcast, that it's a bullshit argument that because the owners have more money to play with, that's the player's fault for not cap smoothing. You guys
as
know
we
how to deal with your
unpack
money.
that, I got there.
Right?
Absolutely. And again, that's why I hope the analytics community comes in and starts fixing this, because I think that's the only way to fix it is when we start seeing reasonable money in terms of cap percentage. It doesn't matter if it's $17 million, but the cap percentage hit is only like 3%. It start making sense and start looking at cap space not as the actual dollars, but the percentage of what you're spending to your cap.
Yeah.
And then in the NBA, I still don't think they look at that. They're just like, well, this is what this guy is worth. It's like, no, what? How much can you not get now?
It's such a star-driven league that it's hard to make that decision. Like you look at Milwaukee now, Giannis is coming up for his next contract, and for a small market team like Milwaukee, they're going to be hard pressed not to give him a supermax. Even though he still hasn't proven that he can extend his range out to 3-point land.
Well, he has to get through a whole season before he can prove that. That's the problem with Giannis, right? Like, it seems like every time he gets the momentum of his season going, something happens, he's out, and then he shows up in the playoffs, and everybody's like, where's the Giannis we all know and love? Because he wrecks the first half of the season, and then he just...
can't... And, like, it's so hard to build a team around a guy when all he has is go to the rim. Like, at that point, you need so much spacing from your other players, which comes at a premium in the league these days. Like, I think it definitely comes into what you were talking about how you don't really see specialists in the analytics department. I think, honestly, guys who come into the NBA just aren't ready to work. And that's why you see so few skilled shooters coming into the NBA is all shooting is work.
Well, and that's why you see no defense.
Yeah,
right?
All of those effort and hustle.
Defense is just effort and work. You can teach D. You
Yeah,
can teach
easily.
speed. You can't necessarily teach a great shot, but
No,
you can teach speed.
You gotta
You can
work
teach
a great shot.
mechanics.
And
You
then
can
it's
teach
just
mechanics,
practice. And I don't think these guys, a lot of, we talked a lot about how on the shop they said, there are so many guys in the NBA who don't have who just don't know how to play basketball. And
Right.
that's, I think that definitely lends itself into a lot of guys who obviously just don't know how to shoot. They haven't spent enough time in the film room or the gym, any of that.
Well, I think part of the problem there is just the fact that again, it's because it's the eye test is so powerful in the NBA that it happens to these kids in high school, and then it's basically like they coast from. What other sport can you think of where it's so guaranteed out of high school that they're going to be NBA players?
It's just NFL, and it's only really quarterbacks. Do you know
Yeah,
that quarterbacks have the highest facial symmetry of any profession in the United States? They
Yes.
pick kids who are good looking, turn them into quarterbacks, and if you're good looking enough, you make the league because all a quarterback really is a leader who can throw a ball. And guys will follow you if they want to be like you.
Yes.
But I really do hope that analytics, like you're saying, plays a larger part in the NBA going forward. I love the way Houston plays. I think they're completely based off of analytics. I think
They are, and
right?
look at what they're doing with the team that they have.
And I
right?
think they're one of the most fun teams to watch. The way they work the clock and they work the defense and they work the metrics. It's really interesting.
And it's all about pace. They play at the right pace, and it doesn't mean that they're always playing fast. They know when to slow it down, which is OKC's problem. Is the fact that Westbrook doesn't know when to fucking slow it down,
and that's
bring
why,
it back.
That's why I love that Golden State Houston matchup so much because it was really just two analytics-based teams. You've got Golden State who shoots the lights out because they know that if they just shoot more three-pointers and they have
win.
guys who can shoot them, they'll score more points. It's basic math. And then on Houston's end, they say, we have 24 seconds to score on you, and I don't care how long it takes, but I'm either going to get a layup or an open three-pointer because those are the two most successful shots if we can hit them at their respectable rates in the NBA. And it was so much fun.
It's risk reward, right? Like it's either a layup or like, and gone are the days of I'm like a step away from the 3-point line and I'm jacking up a shot, and I've got to say I appreciate it, right? Yeah. Like I as much as I complain about today's NBA, there are some positives that are coming from this, and that would be one of the big ones. I hate the turnaround jump shot. I love Michael Jordan, but the rest of these kids came out all thinking that they could turn around jump shot, and it's like, no, it's not a good shot just because you hit it. It still doesn't make it a good shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so hard to say. It's like,
of course.
No, I get it, but it's just still not a good shot. Like, I'd rather see you dribble up to a guy with a hand in your face and at least try for a three instead of kill clock to set up a turnaround jump shot, because it's all about speed, right? It's all about get those points and get back. Let's not always run into 2 seconds left on the shot clock where I just have to jack it up and hope for the best.
You're taking a low quality shot. Now,
absolutely.
I think we're coming to the end here, but as a wrap up, if you had to say who's going to get more wins out of this Leonard-DeRozan trade, do you see San Antonio adding more or Toronto adding more?
That's tough. Because Toronto, minus just Siakam and DeRozan adding Kawhi, they should still be a 60-team win because the East technically has gotten weaker than it was last year because LeBron is gone.
Definitely.
However, some teams have shored up a little bit in the East, right? I expect Indiana to be better.
The top is still set a little bit.
But the Raptors should still walk into more than half of the teams that they face in the East and just kick them around, right? Yeah. So I would say, but still, 59 wins is hard to top. That's a good season. That is a good season. So they're kind of handicapped there, right? Because if they win 4 more games, they could be 100 times better and still just win 4 more games, which is still a really good season. Whereas at the 47 mark of San Antonio, I mean, they could be a 59-win team.
You think so, eh? With DeRozan?
With Pops.
With Pops.
Right? Like, you know what I mean? Because DeRozan isn't getting any less talent to play with right now. You know what I mean? And he did what he did in Toronto, and he's and I think a lot of people could actually say he's getting a little more talent, especially when it comes to scoring the basketball.
Yeah. And so last
Right.
but not least, I know that Bill Simmons thinks that Toronto's better than Philly now. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay,
Yes.
There we go. I'm glad that we could end on a little bit of a Toronto boost note. All right, buddy. So we've got another episode of Home Court on Sunday with Zardo. Until
Yep.
then, man, I hope you have a good night.
Yeah, you too, brother.
Same with you, viewers. Thanks for stopping by. And
Yeah,
to
thanks
any
for
of-
watching.
Right, and to any of you watching us on YouTube or listening to us on Spotify, we are also available on those two platforms if you're using the other one. All right, guys. Have a good night.
Have a great night.